This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. Good morning, I'm John Trout. It's Wednesday, October 23rd, 2024. Here's what's coming up on America in the Morning.
Donald Trump's former chief of staff says the former president criticized Americans in uniform and offered praise for Adolf Hitler. I'm John Stolnis in Washington.
Leaked documents potentially exposing Israel's next move.
The FBI is investigating the alleged leak.
I'm Clayton Neville.
A deadly E.coli outbreak is being linked to McDonald's Quarter Pounders. I'm Ed Donahue.
Rudy Giuliani is ordered by a judge to hand over his assets to two Georgia election workers he defamed.
They are engaged in surreptitious illegal activity.
I'm Jim Roop.
On Wall Street, the Nasdaq's on a 5-day winning streak, and earnings are coming today from Tesla and Boeing. I'm Jessica Ettinger.
Cubans endured another night of no electricity following Hurricane Oscar. I'm Donna Warder.
All ahead on America in the Morning. An explosive new interview with Donald Trump's former chief of staff, General John Kelly, details disparaging comments he says Trump made to him repeatedly while in office. Here's our John Stolnis.
In an interview with New York Times reporter Michael Schmidt, Kelly says if given a second term, Trump would want to rule like a dictator, recounting instances in which the former president offered praise for Adolf Hitler.
Well, look, you commented more than once that, that Hitler did some good things too. And of course, if you know history, again, I think he's lacking in that. But if you know what Hitler was all about, it'd be pretty hard to make an argument that he did anything good.
Kelly also telling the New York Times Trump didn't respect the sacrifices made by U.S. servicemen and women.
He basically said to you that those who died for America on the battlefield were losers and suckers, and he said it more than once.
Yes, but he would say it would always, that something else would get him going off at times again McCain. He never could wrap his arms around why people would serve the country in uniform. What was in it for them? That was the general theme.
Kelly also said he believes Trump fits the definition of a fascist.
Is in the far right area. He's certainly an authoritarian, admires people who are dictators. He has said that. So he certainly falls into the general definition of fascist.
On the campaign trail yesterday, Trump making that final push at a rally with supporters in Greensboro, North Carolina.
Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? I don't think so.
Instead of campaigning, Harris was sitting down for an interview with NBC's Hallie Jackson. Among the topics, working with a potential Republican Congress on abortion legislation if she's elected.
What concessions would be on the table? Religious exemptions, for example? Is that something that you would consider?
I don't think we should be making concessions when we're talking about a fundamental freedom to make decisions about your own body.
Later today, Harris will participate in a CNN town hall with a Univision interview airing as well. Trump will be in Georgia for two events in the afternoon and evening. John Stolnis, Washington.
The grease in the fryers may have cooled down, but the fallout from Trump serving French fries at McDonald's continues to be part of salty discussions in the media and at kitchen tables across the nation. Here's our Jeff McKay with a recap.
Capitalizing on the move, the Trump campaign is selling T-shirts and hats imprinted with the words MAGA-Donalds. Rumors have been circulating on social media that former President Trump's weekend visit to the popular fast food chain was allegedly staged.
I love McDonald's. I love jobs. I like to see good jobs. And I think it's inappropriate when somebody puts down all over the place that she worked at McDonald's. It was a big part of her resume that she worked at McDonald's, how tough a job it was.
To definitely prove that she worked at McDonald's in the Alameda, California restaurant during the summer of 1983, her campaign has said Harris could theoretically release an old pay stub if she kept such records. McDonald's corporate office says in part, and I quote, "We at our franchisees do not have records for all positions dating back to the early 1980s. I'm Jeff McKay.
The U.S. says American leaders are having productive conversations in Israel as the world reacts to more killings of top terrorists in the Middle East and as the Pentagon addresses leaked documents tied to the conflict. Correspondent Clayton Neville is in with the latest.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the country's defense secretary following the recent killing of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar.
What Secretary Blinken is trying to do is important to, the long-term goal here, what we're trying to get, but also ending the war in Gaza and getting that humanitarian aid.
White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre says that the U.S. is still insisting that innocent lives be spared as much as possible.
Israel must take every feasible precaution to prevent civilians during this operation.
Biden administration officials say that Blinken discussed in detail ways to capitalize on what's being considered a strategic success already. The Pentagon addressing a leak. Brigadier General Pat Ryder.
The FBI is investigating the alleged leak of classified documents and working closely with the Department of Defense and the intelligence community on this.
The two leaked reports from the intelligence community show Israeli preparations for an expected strike on Iran, with details.
As it relates to the safety or the safeguarding of sensitive information, that is, of course, something that we take incredibly seriously.
Ryder addressed reports that the leak came from a government employee whose name was being posted on social media.
This official is not a subject of interest, and the department remains fully committed to supporting the investigation.
It's believed, though, the documents were made public through a leak, not any sort of online or server hack. Meanwhile, on the ground in the Middle East, Israel says that a Hezbollah official expected to be the group's next leader is confirmed killed in an airstrike. I'm Clayton Neville.
Politics aside, McDonald's is now dealing with a product nightmare. That When America in the Morning continues after these messages. Welcome back. You're with America in the Morning. Dry conditions continue for most of the West, but which areas can still have some rain returning to today's forecast? Here's AccuWeather.com meteorologist LaTroy Thornton.
Today does bring a rather dry day to not only most of the West, but really most of the nation, as a lack of moist flow shuts off the precipitation potential. However, a fast-moving storm brushing on shore in the northwest will mean some showers for western Montana and northern parts of Idaho. As this storm takes shape, periods of steadier rain can break out, especially by the afternoon, from eastern Oregon into central Idaho, with enough cold air funneling into the region to support some snow for portions of the Oregon Cascades. Mild and dry conditions instead win out from the northern high plains of eastern Montana, across Wyoming and into northern parts of the Four Corners area, but it turns warmer close to the west coast and downright hot from southern Arizona to the Los Angeles area under sunshine. It does stay warm and dry for the southern plains and most of the southeast as well, but cooler air instead filters into the northern and central plains behind a cold front pushing toward the eastern states. This front will bring the risk for rain and snow showers into northern sections of Minnesota, with a few rain showers from the upper peninsula of Michigan into central lower Michigan through the day. Thunder showers by this afternoon from western New York toward northwestern Vermont, with some rain showers also building around northwestern Pennsylvania. However, even into the nighttime hours, areas that have already been dry this month near the northeast and mid-Atlantic coast are likely to stay that way through tonight, missing out yet again as drier air remains in place and preventing what is much needed precipitation in spots as drought conditions continue to spread. In New York, expect another mainly sunny and warm day with a high of 75. For Boise, Idaho, increasing clouds give way to periods of rain late today with a high of 62. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist LaTroy Thornton.
Remember to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. I'm John Trout. E.coli outbreak linked to a popular McDonald's product has led to people getting sick and one death. Correspondent Ed Donahue reports.
The CDC says at least 49 people have gotten sick in 10 states, from Wisconsin to Oregon. One person has died. Colorado has the most cases. An older person in that state died. Among those taken to a hospital, a child with severe kidney complications. Everyone interviewed by the CDC in connection with the outbreak reported eating at McDonald's before becoming sick, and most mentioned eating quarter pounders. Investigators are focusing on onions and beef. McDonald's says it may be onions from a single supplier. Slivered onions and beef patties used for quarter pounders have been removed from McDonald's in the affected states, and the burgers may be temporarily unavailable in those states. I'm Ed Donahue.
A federal judge orders Rudy Giuliani to turn over all his luxury assets to two Georgia poll workers he defamed after the 2020 presidential election. With the latest, here's our Jim Roop.
The former New York mayor and Trump attorney called out by name Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss, the mother and daughter election workers about whom Giuliani later admitted made these and other false statements.
Quite obviously, surreptitiously passing around USB ports as if they're vials of heroin or cocaine. I mean, it's obvious to anyone who's a criminal investigator or prosecutor, they are engaged in surreptitious illegal activity. Again, that day.
Moss said what Giuliani claimed was a USB port her mother was passing to her was actually a ginger mint. Giuliani later admitted he lied, falsely accusing Freeman and Moss of election fraud. But as the two testified later, their lives were irreparably harmed. Ruby Freeman.
I've lost my name and I've lost my reputation.
Her daughter, Shay Moss.
A lot of threats, wishing death upon me.
The two sued Giuliani, and yesterday the judge issued a judgment in favor of Freeman and Moss worth nearly $150 million. Some of the assets Giuliani must turn over to the two are his luxury Upper East Side apartment in New York, his Mercedes-Benz, more than a dozen luxury watches, cash, and about $2 million in legal fees. Outside the courtroom late yesterday, Ruby Freeman said money will never solve all the problems Giuliani caused her.
I will always have to be careful about where I go and who I choose to share my name with. I miss my home, I miss my neighbors, and I miss my name.
One item Giuliani does not have to turn over to Freeman and Moss is a World Series ring that his son Andrew claims is rightly his, as his dad gave it to him as a gift. Giuliani, though, has 7 days to turn everything over. I'm Jim Roop.
Coming up next, the Wednesday Business Report on America in the Morning, and why mortgage rates are climbing again after these messages. Welcome back. You're with America in the Morning. The Business Report is brought to you by Fisher Investments. Fisher Investments takes a disciplined approach with investing, helping clients navigate volatile markets. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Here's CNBC's Jessica Ettinger.
Wall Street opens this morning after a mixed day for stocks. The Nasdaq riding a 5-day winning streak, though. Silver hit its highest in 12 years, and gold closed at its 45th record high of the year yesterday. Now at more than $2,761 an ounce. Gold widely believed to be soaring as foreign investors and central banks have been buying up gold while selling their U.S. dollars and debt. That's been pushing up the price. Striking Boeing workers vote today on a tentative deal with the company. The union president spoke with CNBC.
I think it's going to be a tight vote. There's a lot of emotion tied here. There's a lot of history. We've been able to negotiate the best that we could, and we're hoping that our members will consider it, and that's where we're at.
The proposed deal does not include reinstating the pension. Is that a deal breaker?
It is for many members, absolutely, and it's a righteous fight to go after a defined benefit pension. 10 years later, it's certainly never easy to get something back that we lost 10 years prior, but that doesn't mean our members don't deserve it.
Boeing Machinists Union President John Holden on CNBC with CNBC's Phil LeBeau. Billionaire investor Paul Tudor Jones telling CNBC the Trump tax cuts enacted in 2017 need to end or sunset at the end of next year. High earners may have to go back to paying more.
Can I just say this?
Yep.
You have to let the tax cuts expire.
You have to.
You have to let those expire. That's $390 billion. We're going to have, again, we're gonna be broke.
Thank you. CNBC's Jessica Ettinger. Power out for days. Tempers flare. That story when America in the Morning continues after these messages. This is America in the Morning. The Georgia Supreme Court has denied the Republican Party's request to immediately reinstate new ballot rules passed by the state election board. The one-page decision by the Georgia Supreme Court was unanimous, indicating that the ruling will remain in place through Election Day. At issue were more than half a dozen new rules, including one that would have mandated the hand counting of ballots, which critics feared would delay certification of the 2024 election. Tempers are flaring on the streets in Cuba as people deal with a 5-day power outage that was a problem even before this week's hurricane. Correspondent Donna Warder reports.
Havana resident Maide Quiñones says the state is selling their food in cash for Cuban pesos. She says no cards work, there are no banks, there is nothing. Meanwhile, Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel is warning against any unrest. We want to ratify that the revolution will never tolerate this type of conduct, and that all will be prosecuted with the rigor that the revolutionary laws contemplate. Some Cubans have been banging pots and pans in the streets in protest of the nationwide blackout. Many residents say they didn't have consistent power before the storm, all part of energy problems and a deep economic crisis on the island. I'm Donna Warder.
America in the Morning for Wednesday, October 23rd, 2024 is produced by Jeff McKay, senior producer Kevin Delaney. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One. This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. I'm John Trout. Coming up this half hour.
Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are highlighting their economic plans as they reach out to Latino voters.
They have wonderful entrepreneurship.
Jennifer King, Washington.
Lawmakers and state leaders in Texas seemingly at odds over a delayed execution. I'm Clayton Neville.
Reliving the horrors of the Georgia ferry dock collapse, a shortage of an important medical necessity, and killer mom up for parole.
Honda has issued another recall. I'm Shelley Adler.
4 companies charged with downplaying a cyber attack. I'm tech correspondent Chuck Palm.
Award-winning songwriter Lin-Manuel Miranda is offering a new look at the Warriors. I'm Kevin Carr.
Back after these messages. Welcome back. You're with America in the Morning. Dry conditions in the Northeast may be ending today. Here's AccuWeather.com meteorologist LaTroy Thornton with the nation's forecast.
Within what has been an extended or even whole-month-long dry spell for some in the Northeast, an advancing cold front can finally bring at least some risk of precipitation to mainly interior parts of the region for the afternoon and evening hours today, with a shower around for parts of northwestern Pennsylvania and perhaps even some spotty thunder showers for much of western and northern New York State. However, areas closer to the coast from Maine through New England and the Mid-Atlantic, including the I-95 corridor, are expected to remain largely dry even through the night, continuing an exceptional dry streak from New York and Philadelphia to the nation's capital. From the cooler side of the front into the northern and central plains, showers should be numerous around especially the northern Great Lakes region, with most of Michigan in particular facing some wet weather through the day. It's not out of the question that some snowflakes can mix in with those rain showers over far northern Minnesota as well before the precipitation shuts off for the afternoon hours. The southern plains, much of the Midwest, and even a large portion of the South will simply have a warm but dry day today, with perhaps some morning showers building into thunder showers over southern and Atlantic Florida as the day progresses. Much of the same holds true for the West, with generally warm and dry conditions for most from the West Coast into western Nevada, and an even hotter day in store for southern California and southern Arizona. However, a new storm will push on shore through the day, sparking some showers from northern Idaho to western Montana. There can be some intermittent steady rain from central Idaho to eastern Oregon, and some snow as well for the coldest parts of the southern Oregon Cascades. That's the weather across America. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist LaTroy Thornton.
Remember to follow us wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. I'm John Trout. We're now less than 2 weeks before Election Day. The polls, if you can believe them, still too close to call, including in the battleground states between the candidates. The Harris and Trump campaigns are making a push for Latino voters. Correspondent Jennifer King reports.
Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are highlighting their economic plans as they reach out to Latino voters. Trump is promising increased oil production, tariff hikes, and tax cuts.
Hispanic people have tremendous, they say you can't generalize, but I think you can.
Trump spoke at a roundtable for the Hispanic community in North Las Vegas on October 12th.
They have wonderful entrepreneurship, and they have, you have such energy. Just ease up a little bit, okay?
Senior Trump campaign advisor Daniel Alvarez says the Latino American community knows that President Trump is the only candidate who can bring prosperity back to America.
I saw a solar field the other day that looked like it took up half the desert. I'd never saw anything like it. It's all steel and glass and wires, and it looks like hell. And you see rabbits, they get caught in it, and for the environmentalists, it's just terrible.
Vice President Harris intends to highlight her plans to remove college requirements for some federal jobs, provide forgivable loans to encourage small businesses, and increase registered apprenticeships, something her campaign says is resonating with Latino men.
He will pretend he cares about our families.
Kevin Muniz is a spokesman for the Harris-Walz campaign.
If Trump gets the chance again, he will be more dangerous.
Hispanic American voters could swing the outcome in states such as Pennsylvania, Nevada, and Arizona, where running mate J.D. Vance is holding 2 rallies.
Kamala Harris's economic plan is to wage war on American energy, drive up the cost of oil, drive up the cost of natural gas, and drive up the cost of everything that requires low energy costs, which is everything that we buy. Donald Trump's plan to bring down energy prices is very simple. It's drill, baby, drill. We got plenty of oil and gas in our own country. Let's get it out of the ground.
Harris running mate Tim Walz will be sharing a stage in Madison, Wisconsin with former President Barack Obama.
The kind of person who should be in politics. He's a veteran, he's a teacher, he's a coach, he's a hunter, been a great governor, knows who he is and knows what's important.
Harris is scheduled to campaign with the former president and former First Lady Michelle Obama later this week. Jennifer King, Washington.
The life of a Texas death row inmate is spared for now, but the committee who delayed his execution with a subpoena is yet to hear from him. Correspondent Clayton Neville reports.
Robert Roberson's on death row for the 2002 killing of his 2-year-old. The case surrounds shaken baby syndrome, which in recent years critics argue has been debunked as junk science. The case has garnered some high-profile attention. Testimony was given this week in front of a Texas House committee by author John Grisham and TV's Dr. Phil.
You can't kind of say sort of maybe we've got this right. You can't do junk science. You can't have something that has evolved and we're going to ignore that it's evolved and just use what was there at the time.
Texas State Representative Jeff Leach argues Roberson, who's autistic, was poorly represented from day one.
Mr. Roberson was afforded the minimal, and that's probably even being generous and putting it nicely, the minimal assistance of counsel. And in many cases, his counsel actually worked against his interests. And so my opinion is that he had virtually no counsel.
Lawmakers subpoenaed Roberson hours before he was slated to be killed. That led to a stay in his execution. But the governor of Texas didn't like that move and said the legislature stepped out of line. State Attorney General Ken Paxton called the subpoena a constitutional crisis. Now, attorney and legal expert Jeremy Rosenthal says it could get nasty at the state level.
When you issue a subpoena, that is a court order, or in this case, a legislative order for your butt to be in that chair. Now, obviously, the man's in custody, so he has no control over, these types of things. So essentially, it's the Department of Corrections' job to get him there. The legislature could go right back to the judge in Austin, and they could say, Judge, the Department of Corrections needs to come down here and explain why they violated your order. You ordered them to do this. They didn't do it.
Roberson yet to testify as his execution remains on hold and his case remains in the national spotlight. I'm Clayton Neville.
Families of the 7 victims and survivors of a deadly collapse of a ferry dock walkway in Georgia are speaking out. Correspondent Julie Walker reports a 93-year-old great-great-grandmother was among those who lost their lives.
We know that the infrastructure was inadequate because had it been properly inspected, we would not be here today.
As
screams of people on the ferry dock walkway on Zapalo Island, Georgia, recorded by Icy White. Regina Brinson was there with her uncle and a friend with a walker when she heard a crack, and they all ended up in the water and were swept away.
I said, grab my hand. And he grabbed my hand. But he grabbed my shirt too. And he kept pulling me and pulling me and pulling me underwater. And I kept saying to myself, oh my God, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die.
Attorney Ben Crump, who's representing some victims, says the walkway was an issue for the Gullah Geechee community of black slave descendants.
That black community, they believe that they were not getting the resources and the infrastructure. That's right. And they do want the Civil Rights Department to look into this as well. We want an investigation on every level to get the answers to how this happened. And we won't rest until we get those answers.
He wants a federal investigation. I'm Julie Walker.
When we return on America in the Morning, Tim Walz's defamation debunked, new problems for electric vehicles, and the victims charged in a high-tech case. A sample of what we're following next after these messages. Welcome back. You're with America in the Morning. A video purporting to show a former Minnesota high school student saying he was groped and kissed by Democrat vice presidential candidate Tim Walz has been found to be a Russian deep fake. Fox News is reporting that the video, which was circulated on social media, was created by Russian influence actors. The student in question, who now lives in Hawaii, says he never met Tim Walz when he lived in Minnesota and says the actor used in the video looks nothing like him. The video's been viewed more than 5 million times on X, formerly Twitter. America in the Morning continues. A severe side effect from Hurricane Helene's aftermath in North Carolina. Correspondent Haya Panjwani reports on an IV fluid shortage that could impact weeks of surgery schedules across the nation.
People often plan non-emergency surgeries in the fall and early winter months when their insurance coverage will pick up more of the bill. But they may have to wait now. A crucial IV and sterile fluids factory close to North Carolina remains shut down from hurricane-related damage. Hurricane Helene forced Baxter International to close its plant late last month. The lack of supplies is causing some surgery schedules to shift. Health systems started conserving fluids shortly after the plant shut down. Some switched patients who can drink fluids to Gatorade or water instead of giving them an IV. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration has approved temporarily importing fluids from Baxter plants in other countries. I'm Haya Panjwani.
There are new warnings about possible problems with electric vehicles in the wake of Hurricanes Helene and Milton. Correspondent Jackie Quinn reports.
Experts say electric vehicles can catch fire if they were inundated by salt water. So owners who live in the path of storms like Hurricane Helene should try to keep their vehicles dry. If they can't, the car should be towed at least 50 feet away from a home or building in case there is a fire. Florida officials say some 36 vehicles did catch on fire 2 years ago after Hurricane Ian. Thousands suffered damage to batteries. And of course, batteries should be fully charged before a storm in case there are widespread power outages. I'm Jackie Quinn.
Susan Smith is scheduled to be up for parole next month, nearly 30 years after she was convicted of rolling her car into a South Carolina lake and drowning her 2 sons who were strapped in their car seats. The now 53-year-old Smith is serving a life sentence in prison after a jury spared her the death penalty during her 1995 trial. Smith made international headlines in 1994 when she said she was carjacked late at night and that a man drove away with her sons inside. Under the law at that time, she is eligible to ask to be released after serving 30 years in prison. America in the Morning continues. Urgent recall from automaker Honda, the second major callback for their cars this month. Here's correspondent Shelley Adler.
Honda is recalling more than 700,000 vehicles because the high-pressure fuel pump may crack and leak gas, and that would increase the chance of fire. The recall includes the 2023-2024 Accord and Accord hybrids, the 2025 Civic and Civic hybrid, and the CR-V hybrid for the years 2023 through 2025. It's the second major recall this month at Honda after 1.7 million vehicles had potential steering issues. I'm Shelley Adler.
The SEC is charging the victims of a cyber attack because the companies involved failed to disclose the seriousness of the threat to their customers. Here's Chuck Palm with today's Tech Report.
4 companies have been charged with misleading disclosures linked to the 2019 SolarWinds data breach. The SEC announced on Tuesday that it has charged and imposed penalties on these 4 companies: cybersecurity firm Check Point, which will pay $995,000, Memecast, which will pay $990,000, Unisys, which will pay $4 million, and Avaya, which will pay $1 million in fines because it is alleged they had negligently downplayed and minimized the damage of the cybersecurity breach. Acting Director of SEC's Division of Enforcement, Sanjay Wadhwa, said, "While public companies may become targets of cyber attacks, it's incumbent upon them not to further victimize their shareholders or other members of the investing public by providing misleading disclosures." The 4 companies were accused of different violations, including statements saying that a limited number of emails were accessed, describing the attack in generic terms, or minimizing the attack by failing to disclose the quantity of encrypted emails and credentials that the hackers stole. Follow me on X at Chuck Palm.
America in the Morning's Robert Workman has Wednesday sports.
Game night number 1 for the NBA, tipping off its 79th regular season with a doubleheader. The Celtics raised their 18th championship banner to the rafters in Boston, then dropped the hammer on the Knicks 132-109. Jason Tatum had 37 points, plus a brand new ring.
It was just a wild moment. Like, I'm a part of it. I'm a part of history, and it was worth the wait.
Tatum hit 14 of Boston's NBA record-tying 29 three-pointers. The only thing that didn't go their way, they missed their last 13 long-range attempts in an effort to set a new record. The Lakers topped the Timberwolves 110-103. History in L.A. as LeBron and Bronny James took the court together in the second quarter, the first father and son to appear in an NBA game together. They combined for 16 points. Okay, all for dad. NHL Tuesday was Frozen Frenzy. All 32 teams in action. The Jets rally past the Blues 3-2 to remain unbeaten at 6-0. Predators blanked the Bruins 4-0 for their first win of the season. UC Saros stopped 33 shots. Senators slashed Utah 4-0, 31 saves for Anton Forsberg. Red Wings shut out the Islanders 1-0. Alex Lyon with 29 saves. Patrick Kane had the game's only goal. Brandon Hagel had a hat trick as the Lightning zapped the Devils. Hurricanes over the Oilers in overtime. Flames singed the Penguins in a shootout. Victories for the Capitals, Wild, Blue Jackets, Sabres, Rangers, Avalanche, Canucks, Ducks, and Golden Knights. The World Series begins Friday in Los Angeles, the Yankees against the Dodgers, and safe home to Fernando Valenzuela, who burst onto the baseball scene in 1981, sparking Fernando Mania in SoCal and his native Mexico as he won the NL Cy Young and Rookie of the Year awards while leading the Dodgers to the World Series title. He pitched for 17 years in the majors, then did the Spanish language broadcast for the Dodgers for more than 20 years, stepping aside earlier this month to focus on his health. Fernando Valenzuela was 63 years old. That's Wednesday Sports.
Thank you, sir. When we return on America in the Morning, government limits affection. There's no love lost on that story after these messages. Back now, this is America in the Morning. A cult classic gang film from 1979 is getting a musical reboot. Kevin Carr has details about The Warriors.
Warriors, come out to play.
In the era of old things being new again, the classic 1979 gangland film The Warriors has gotten a reboot of sorts. Lin-Manuel Miranda, the creative force behind Hamilton, has updated Walter Hill's cult film into a concept album featuring a gender-swapped cast and a slate of new songs. Miranda Miranda worked with award-winning playwright Issa Davis to develop the musical adaptation, he explained to WABC in New York.
New York in 1979, all the amazing musical genres and subcultures, graffiti-covered trains. Hip-hop is just an infant at this point. That was our playground.
Based on the 1965 novel, the original film tells the story of a meeting of gangs in New York City brokering a peace deal before a turf war breaks out.
Can you dig it?
The concept album features Lauryn Hill as the gang leader Cyrus. In order to represent the different boroughs, they brought in other hip-hop hitmakers.
We have Chris Rivers for the Bronx, we have Nas for Queens, we have Cameron Killer Cam for Manhattan, Ghostface and RZA for Staten Island, and then of course Busta Rhymes for Brooklyn.
Right now, this new version of The Warriors is just a concept album. Will it become a stage play or later another film like Miranda's previous projects?
I don't think it's a movie because I think it's a love letter to a movie. We're both theater artists. I think we'd love to see a version down the road.
Can you dig it? I'm Kevin Carr.
There's saying your goodbyes, and then there's hugging someone goodbye with a strict time limit. Correspondent Charles de Ledesma reports that authorities are imposing what they're calling a hug cap at a New Zealand airport.
Emotional farewells are a common sight at airports, but travellers leaving the New Zealand city of Dunedin now have to be quick. A new 3-minute cap on goodbye hugs in the airport's drop-off area is intended to prevent lingering cuddles from causing traffic jams. CEO Dan DeBono tells TVNZ it's the airport's way of reminding people that the zone is for quick farewells only.
This is about people dropping off, having a hug, having a farewell and moving on. And we really want to create space for others to be able to do the same. This is about safety and reducing congestion during our peak times.
De Bono adds it's not being inhuman to suggest 3 minutes is too short a time to adequately hug.
Having a hug, a 3-minute hug, I think I've said on a previous interview, that's a long hug. I tell you what, you can get a lot of oxytocin and serotonin out of a 3-minute hug.
The cap, he adds, has polarised social media users, saying we've been accused of breaching basic human rights, and how dare we limit how long someone can have a hug for. I'm Charles de Ledesma.
And that's our show for today, Wednesday, October 23rd, 2024. America in the Morning is produced by Jeff McKay. Senior producer Kevin Delaney. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One.